I said talk to me, damn it, or else I'm gonna throw you in the fire!
You stupid bitch, you filthy... FlyOver State of Fear. Alright. Welcome to FlyOver State of Fear. I'm your host,
FlyOver State of Fear. Yeah, I always like that. I always wanted to get one of those horror movie voices, like the guy, the radio, the Dr. Demento kind of thing. Welcome to the FlyOver State of Fear.
FlyOver State of Fear.
Yeah, there you go. Get that. FlyOver State of Fear.
FlyOver State of Fear. And here,
don't worry, Yusuf's already going to cut this out.
Yeah, cut this out. All right. Anyway,
leave in the funny part and cut out the thing about Parks and Rec. It's fine.
Okay. So, hello. I am here with my other co-host of FlyOver State of Film, Brian Hurst. How you doing, Brian? Thanks for joining me.
Oh, hey, thanks for having me on your brand new show.
Yes, yeah, this is episode 3, and we will be talking about 2017's The Ritual. But before we get into any of that, Brian, I mean, as you know, and as listeners of FlyOver know, we talk about horror all the time in that show, but decided to create this podcast to just have a full stream.
We talk about it so much, it's spilled over into another podcast.
Yeah. As you recently said, well, I can't wait to watch a horror movie every 3 episodes. So,
it's
anyway.
Good to know that the things I say stick with you guys. I always like when they come back. It's like, that's good dad shit. It's like, you gotta say, it makes me proud to know the things I say, they connect.
But that was the nucleus, though. Comments like that was the nucleus of me wanting to create this. I was like, oh, I do talk about this shit a lot. So anyway, before we get into The Ritual or really anything in this, Brian, I assume that you've been a horror guy for a while, but could I get some background of, what got you into the genre, or are you even in the genre? I mean, I know you are, but...
Yeah, it's true. It's okay. I get it. No, I probably got into... I probably started watching horror movies around 6th or 7th grade. I saw my first, Carrie was a big one for me. A couple of the later Friday the 13th, 5 and 6. And now, then... no, go ahead.
Oh, no. Now, something like Carrie and all that, it was interesting, though, because you're a bit older, not too much. Was that just straight up rental, or...
Yeah, Carrie I saw at a friend's birthday. He had a sleepover birthday party, and they rented it. My buddies, where I saw the Friday the 13th, my friend owned a couple of them. He had tapes.
Okay, just curious. So anyway, please, continue with you.
No, and then, I was, that kind of was my starter, and then I'm a freshman or a sophomore in high school when Scream comes out, and, Scream was a huge deal for horror. Horror, really made its comeback off of that, and I like Scream, obviously, everybody does. And
doesn't.
So then, through the rest of high school, and then into my early 20s where I'm living on my own and stuff, and horror in the early 2000s was all the rage again. It was back. There wasn't as much good. Horror is much better now. There was a lot of horror in the early 2000s, but not all of it has held up very well.
It's funny, and it's funny to mention that because it doesn't, right? That's what I grew up on.
Yeah.
I think the movies are a little more fun to watch. There's so much more camp to be watched in those 90s and 2000s because they're not very good, so they're a lot more palatable. It's just meaning for a general watch. Movies today, what we're going to talk about, there's so many more heavy horror movies,
right? Well, in the era of the prestige horror movie where you've got something legitimately terrifying like a killer or a monster, but the real horror is the existential horror that you feel, or the guilt, or the like your your depression, or your grief, or whatever it is. The characters, starting in like, I don't know, what's 2014, 2015, with stuff like the Babadook, they really started to kind of like,
Yeah,
and
that's
now,
like, well, it's around there, 12.
yeah, but then like, and now we've got into prestige horror with stuff like The Witch and Midsummer, and
Even,
Hereditary, and
I mean,
It Comes at Night, or whatever. There's so many that
even
are,
big
they've
budget,
got something scary in them, but they're not necessarily just about the scary thing. You know what I
even
mean?
your- even your big budget films mimic that prestige horror, right? Like the big one that stands out is like The Conjuring, right? Like that one mimics prestige horror. It's not, but
No, no,
it
it's definitely not. It's much
it,
more of it's like Insidious, or any of those,
it's
like, kind of.
terrifying.
Yeah,
It's
it's
one
scary.
to me, it's terrifying. But it's one of those movies that you could tell somewhere in some point, like James Wan was like, "I wish I just had $8 million to make this movie."
Yeah.
Um, that we're not talking about that. We're talking about prestige. So anyway, we'll get into our prestige horror movie, The Ritual, in a minute. But yeah. So you have that new, kind of almost normal path. I feel like everyone, a lot of people have a normal path to horror. And if I sleep over, I like it. I get into slashers. This is what I'm noticing. I'm even talking to like four people into this.
Sure.
I'm into
I think
slashers, and then I
slashers
grow
kind
into
of what
something
everybody
else.
starts with, right?
That I think that's where I more would say started with, right? Terrified of everything, then dip my toe in. Mine wasn't slashers. Mine was Dawn of the Zack Snyder Dawn of the Dead.
Okay.
That's actually when I learned I could enjoy them and laugh. And then it was ruined a few months later when I tried watching House of a Thousand Corpses. And then I was like, all right, we got to scale this thought
Right, right.
process.
I see there are levels here.
Yeah, yeah, because I didn't really get it right. I was like, I don't get
That's
anyway.
true. I was slamming on early 2000s horror, and there are some good movies in there. There's like some really good stuff in there. I do think the 2004 Dawn of the Dead is good. I do think like 20 Days Later, again, is another one. And there's like there's always gems, but there was also just a lot of stuff coming out.
I know this
So
isn't.
I shouldn't denigrate a whole decade
No,
like that.
you're totally good because you're not wrong.
I
I'm just a
rarely
fan.
am, Joe.
I'm just a fan of the Scream knockoffs as a genre.
Oh yeah. Hey, it
That's
gave us
one of my favorite.
Halloween H2O. So
That's what I mean. It gave us Halloween H2O. It
fun.
gave us an old FlyOver classic, Urban Legend, uh, and some others. Anyway, but I do want to ask you one question before we get to The Ritual, and I'll parlay this in The Ritual because you bring up a really good point. So, do you think mid 2000, early 2000s should be the better primed demographic for remakes because of like the recent example with we both just watched Wrong Turn, which is very similar to The Ritual.
Yeah, it's definitely got vibes. I was actually going to say that, like, as we talked about The Ritual, isolated like communities of weirdos have become a big thing in the last couple of years.
Well, I
Wrong
mean,
Turn, The Foundation. Uh, we were just
so
talking about Midsummer.
yeah,
Also, The Apostle. I don't know if you remember The Apostle came out
I don't,
last year.
don't remember that one. Did not see it, but I'll take your word for it.
Now you got
Uh,
another horror movie to watch. Boom, nailed it.
the Apostle, write it right down. But that's a good point, and maybe that's because I heard this a long time ago. Horror mimics what's going on in our culture. That was
Hmm.
becomes popular movies. So like those mid 2000s movies, like Saw, Hostel, very represents like Iraq War, torture, seeing things on the television really being shown to you, and you could trace that back through history of like each decade, what's going on, the current. So maybe with our current stuff like these, more cult-like things or more,
Well, just think about
kind of
the way
QAnon
the
and
two sides of the aisle think about each other, and how you think your neighbor, you might not be trustworthy, or might not be, because they don't believe the same thing as you, or they don't, you know what I mean? We get into these bubbles, and that's ultimately what these movies have in them, right? Like there's all these, the village in Midsummer is a bubble, the village in this
sure.
is a bubble, you know what I mean? And
So
so, like, when you're like, it's all playing into that idea of like, you don't know who's out there, and you don't know the people that are out there. They don't share your same values. They're very scary.
yes. So on that note, I think it is a good time to talk about 2017. I guess we all watched on Netflix. So 2018's The Ritual, directed by David Bruckner. I have been liking to give. I was surprised by this Rotten Tomato score, and its Letterboxd score actually, because they're on par with each other. So Rotten Tomato critic scores is 73%. And I was like, that's interesting because I could see also critics creaming their pants over this. And then the Letterboxd score is a 3.2, which is more of just an audience score. And the audience score for this was a 60. I was actually the synopsis. I believe I pulled this from Wikipedia. Is literally the shortest synopsis ever, and it's perfect. Oh, by the way, everyone,
don't want to give away too much. You don't want to give away too much.
A group of old college friends reunite for a trip to a forest in Sweden, Northern Europe, but encounter a menacing presence there stalking them. Not quite exactly what happens. I will give you a little more. The movie starts off with a phenomenal cold open. A group of friends are planning their essentially their guys' weekend away. And they're throwing out there Vegas, Ibiza, the party locations, even like Belgium. There's a good joke about that. I mean, I didn't get it, but they were laughing.
I'm not Belgian, but they thought it was very funny.
Yeah. So, but they're just planning it, and then this whole time, guys. By the way, I'm gonna mess. Even though there's 5 names to remember, I'm gonna mess all these ones up. 2 of the friends go to the liquor store. Liquor store gets robbed. The one guy. Basically, I mean, he gives the robber everything, but basically just gets murdered. And not basically, gets murdered.
Does he? He doesn't want to give up his wedding ring or something?
He doesn't want to give up his wedding ring, and as someone who's bought a wedding ring, just fucking give the wedding ring.
Give up everything.
I mean, the guy.
You don't want to give up your life, right?
So
the other guy, Luke, who was our main character, played by Rafe Spall, who it blew my mind when I finally realized that he's the kid in Shaun of the Dead who works with Sean, who tells him he's got red on him. And like by the time he does Hot Fuzz, he's one of the Andys, which is the 2 detectives. He must have dropped like 40 pounds, and he just like lost his baby fat, and he looks like a man. Like, you know what I mean? I was just like this short period of time between like 3 years between Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz, and now you see him all the time. Rafe Spall's in tons of stuff.
Yeah, because I went through their oh yeah, this is starring Rafe Spall, Robert James-Collier, Arsher Ali, Sam Troughton, and Paul Reed. I have them here. I don't know.
Yeah, no. Them. The only one that I had really recognized from anything is the guy who hurts his knee. He's in Alien vs. Predator.
You would recognize that. I looked, but when I went through it, yeah, I noticed. I was like, oh, he was in Hot Fuzz, and so we have a guy from AVP. So anyway, he watches. He really can't. Luke can't do anything. He watches his friend.
He kind of ducks behind a thing, and he. He's self-preservation. I mean,
he can't do anything. I mean, it's not
he would
like
have just gotten killed
guys.
Too, likely. But
And the one note there, we're just going through it now. My one note was like, at first I thought it was a machete the guy had. I'm like, that's just a weird thing to be carrying around. I think it's a pipe, which makes more sense.
But it does have a slashing sound when when he swings it. The sound effect has that slashing kind of noise.
This movie kind of had a lot of those for me. I'd write a note down, and then it would answer my note like a minute later.
Yeah.
Anyway, that happens, and then 6 months later, we meet the guy. Oh, one part of the one guy suggests who dies. Let's go hiking. Get shut down.
Right. They kind of laugh him out of the bar because they're all suggesting these party weekends, and he's like, "Let's go hiking in Sweden," and then he gets killed. So then cut to their hiking in Sweden, and to kind of like as an honorary trip to him.
What the movie does give you is, they get his memory stuff out of like the memory of what's the main guy?
The main character's Luke.
No, what's the dead guy's name?
Oh gosh, I can't remember.
Rob?
It was Roger, maybe.
Roger.
Rob. Robert.
Rob. I think it's Rob.
Rob. Okay.
Anyway, they get his like memoriam out of the way, which I thought was very nice. Like they do their part, they pour it out. They have a very nice scene. This movie's
right. Basically, it's over, and they're heading back to the lodge now. Like they're hiking back. That's the whole idea.
Yes.
And the guy we were talking about from AVP, his name's Dom. He hurts his knee, And so they alter their course to try to shorten the distance between them and the lodge to get back faster because Dom is bitching up a storm about his busted knee.
And so they say the shortcut. I mean, so ill-advised. I mean, this at least is one of its movie is very smartly written, but it's the one thing where you're like, what the fuck are you doing? Anyway, they're going through the woods, and
Well, real quick before we get into that, I wanted to talk a little bit about just real quick, part of what I like about this movie and part of why I chose it. So we're at a point now where they're in a situation where they have somebody who's hurt and they're moving into the woods. They're kind of going into an unknown territory. And some of my favorite recent horror movies the last couple of years have done this. I guess not the last couple of years because I think The Descent came out in 2009 or something.
This had strong Descent vibes. That was my
right,
first. It's a movie about Trump.
Yeah, the idea of okay, so you have a group of people in a situation that's already a real world situation that's already kind of going bad, and then the addition of a supernatural element to that. Underwater is another one that came out last year with Kristen Stewart.
Yes.
And then I've also one that popped to my mind that was From Dusk Till Dawn. It's a movie where you already have something fucked up happening, and then it turns again.
I love that
you
pick.
know.
That's a flyover movie if I've never heard one or not.
You're probably
not I just put them in the bank.
So we'll check by that.
But that's absolutely right. Like you already have something bad happening, and then we're adding supernatural, and that's the formula. My thoughts immediately were, oh, guy's version of The Descent.
Right, even to the point where we have this kind of underlying trauma that is causing a rift between some of the characters, and has this, that The Descent has that as well. You have interpersonal, and that's what we're talking about. What more modern horror is doing, they're really delving into the interpersonal things of the characters and the pain and the guilt and things they're dealing with too.
I mean, this movie could have been about a band, going through the death of someone, and meaning the bones of the story. You didn't need the monster.
Yeah.
But it does, and it's a sneaky monster movie, which I love. It's literally a creature feature, but it veils itself from being a creature.
Very slowly, you're out in the woods. They're kind of lost. It starts raining really heavily. They find this cabin, and they decide to stay there. They find this weird statue or kind of shrine up in the.
It was in the attic.
Yeah, up in the attic. Oh, I think actually even before this, though, we should mention they come across a deer strung up in a tree.
That was one of those things where,
right, they're just freaking. Things they're getting a little bit they're on an unknown path. Then they come across some unsettling things, unnatural things. A dead deer would not be so unsettling, but it's way high up in a tree with no real indication of how it got there.
Blood is fresh. There's comments about it, and one thing I liked about it, I like a lot about this movie a lot, and like I said, this movie was answering me fucking questions. I would write down and they would answer. Is because the character would go, "You're all dumb," as you do with most horror movies, and then someone would say maybe we should go the other way. Maybe we should get out of here, because they also pair in Dom, the one with the busted knee. He's a skeptic, right? He not even just a skeptic. Nothing's ever going on. You guys are just crazy.
Yeah. No matter what, at the very worst, it's rednecky, hillbillies out there in the woods or something. That's all he thinks.
So they see this deer, and like Brian said, they go to this cabin, and the cabin has a wooden sculpture with chicken feet attached to it.
Yeah.
And basically,
your shrine looks like a headless guy with antler arms.
Yeah, and this is when the movie really pulls us into our horror element of it. And Dom falls asleep, wakes up, and there's a lot of dream sequences in this movie. And this is
right.
What,
Luke is always having, and actually it's kind of explained later, which I like. But he's he falls asleep in the cabin. And he has a very vivid dream of being in the liquor store.
Mm-hmm. There's always a liquor store.
Yeah, Like it's always flashing back to the stuff that
bites.
happened when his friend got killed. Obviously, the guilt he's carrying and whatever. But you only ever see his dream, everybody else. But when he wakes up, he's outside and everybody else is inside and they're all freaking out too. Dudes are screaming, pissing their pants. The one guy is naked, worshiping that statue, but he doesn't remember how he got there. Like he's like asleep, but he's naked and worshiping shrine.
So anyway, they say, let's keep going. And then thankfully they do say, let's go back the other way we came. We'll take the further route. They're freaked out. There's some argument, but that's what they settle on. We haven't mentioned Hutch yet. Hutch is a
also
they
walk out of the cabin and there's runes now carved in all the trees too, which I thought was that had a very Blair Witch vibe to it. And again, like I like the way you talked about how it unveils itself as a sneaky creature feature, because at this point you're like, what are we dealing with? A cult movie here? We got some kind of weird like forest spooks. We're not. It's getting creepy, but they're still keeping they're playing it kind of close to the vest.
So why, Brian? Because you picked this movie. Why? And you've mentioned it so many times, and I've watched it before, and it didn't connect with me as much as it did with you. Why did this hit so hard for you? Also, I know you referenced this so many times.
Yeah, I do. I 100% think this is one of the best horror movies of the last 5 years. I think it can hold its own up against any of the prestige movies we were talking about earlier. I think it's that good. I think it's a mix of what we talked about. I think it's a mix of like the way they are like delving into the character interactions and dealing with, Luke is dealing with his grief and his friends. Obviously, other friends are blaming him and for what happened and not doing enough, and in a way processing their own guilt about not having been the one who was in there and everything. And then also on top of that, all the horror elements really work for me. And then we can talk more about the creature and how that's brought in later. But like I said, everything really falls for me.
Okay, I'm just curious of the because of everything to pick, you were like Ritual. Anyone claim Ritual? And I'm like,
well, yeah, I wanted to do the Ritual, and I wanted to talk, like I said, about that thing about I just like the idea. I think it's a little subgenre of horror that I really enjoy, of a real world kind of emergency that then is exacerbated by like some kind of supernatural element.
What's cool about this, like you were talking earlier, it's like it's a real world. And when you put people in these positions of in the woods, but like hiking in Sweden, not going camping even in anywhere in the United States, right? In Sweden and or like the descent in caves, you don't have to write in any stupid cell phone line. Like even if you did have something, no one's gonna get to you anyway.
Yeah.
So that was a big plus for this. They really take it out of this, and we get some good background about every character of who they are. Some have kids, some have wives, and so I'm just gonna more turmoil happens, and then they finally think they get to where they're going. They're all broken, beaten down. One of them dies, and you don't see it. It's more of just another fever dream that happens, and one's dead.
Right. Well, like the second night,
yes,
they all tent up, which I would have never. First of all, I'd have been like, no, I don't care. I know we all just got in a fight. We're all getting in. First of all, we're all getting in one tent. We're all tenting together. This is shit is too weird for us to be separating from each other and stuff. But yeah, he has another one of his dreams, and at the end, the one dude's tent is kind of snatched up, and when he wakes up, very Blair Witch again, the tent is torn up and it's empty. And then not too shortly after that, they find Hutch. Hutch gets snatched in the middle of the night. He was like, he's what I like to call the linchpin character. In horror movies, one of the things that they love to do to like throw things off is take the person that you would obviously think is the natural leader, or like who kind of like keeps the peace, or like keeps his head on straight, and kill that person first.
You know who he is? He is when they finally remake this movie for America in like 4 years. He's Bradley Cooper.
Yeah, they should though. This movie's in English and everything. They should just
I'm
kidding.
This.
Don't do that.
I'm kidding. That was my one. That it's like
terrible. That's a terrible idea, Joe. Don't speak that evil into the world, Joe.
Money.
But so now the thing is like chasing them. And Rafe Spall does get a glimpse of it up on a ridge. And he doesn't get a glimpse of it. He sees like a hand on a tree, but you can tell how big this thing is. It's quite large, and
it's one of the coolest creature designs.
It kind of like chases them into a village. They finally do come across, like you talked about here, like a very isolated village. Of course, they just get taken hostage immediately.
So there's one thing I've been thinking this whole time. They go to this village, but really from the start of them on this trail it just seems like this entity has been guiding them to this spot this whole time. It's not like they stumbled upon anything. Like, things are happening. There's more paranoia setting in.
After the night in the cabin, Luke has like a mark on his chest.
Yeah.
No one else has it. They all have fucked up dreams, but only Luke has the like weird like mark on his chest. And when he gets to the village, all the people in the village have it too. So I think you're 100% right that it was kind of like hurting them that way, you know.
It's a chosen one story, you know. Yes,
in a way,
hurt that way, and I don't. But that's where I get blurry with like theory of like I think they're getting there because there's the woman, you know, who dies. Like, I was thinking, did she die because, you know, the beast essentially knew she helped Luke out and was, you know, got to her, or does that beast is just a beast at the end?
I feel like I was gonna say I feel like at that, well, the way they describe it, because they have it basically they're gonna sacrifice Dom, but they seem to want to perform a ritual on Luke and make him part of the group.
Yes, everyone there is part of the group. They all have that mark,
right? And they want to, and she tells him that they worship it, that she gives it a name, but then she calls it a bastard child of Loki. She says it's a god, basically. Yeah. So we're supposed to think some kind of demigod creature.
I have a answer. So in that theology, it's actually a troll in modern terms. It's just like a troll dweller, a woodsly creature.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, so that's a good description. I literally have that written down as Jonton, bastard child of Loki.
Yeah.
And so that's where I was conflicting with this thing of, you know, are they guiding here? Clearly that marking means something. It's on everyone's chest. It's everywhere. You know, there's an entity bringing everyone. You're not going to survive if you don't have that marking. It's not, because then you have Luke finally. Do you want to go more into what actually happens in?
Well, I wanted to talk a little bit just about like, because they're going to sacrifice Dom, and I just think it's interesting because this is again where we get a little more of a reveal of what the creature can do. He's all strung up. He's like basically put out King Kong style to like let this beast come get him, and then what he sees come through the forest is his wife. We haven't seen his wife. You know, we don't know what she looks like, but
you just know her by name.
Yeah, you just know her by name, and he's calling out to her, and she comes up to him, and she puts her hands on his face, and then we cut back, and we see it's the creature, and this creature's like, it's almost got human arms, but they're like mandibles. He uses it like they're up by its face. It's like a huge deer-like thing. It's really kind of hard to describe.
And Jawa eyes.
It's got Jawa, which I feel like it uses to kind of hypnotize him, but I also... Then later, when it's chasing Luke through the woods, he's seeing like the lights and stuff from so I think it can like alter his perception all the time, which I think speaks to your thing of, was it guiding them? Was it pushing them? I think so. Yeah, because it can like affect them.
Because the one girl says something along the lines of, well, you're here because you have more pain than anyone else.
Yeah,
with her,
like
something
it sensed this grief, this pain that he was carrying, and latched onto that, and wanted to like make him part of this group. I just don't know why.
In this conversation, we didn't even touch on like, so we as the audience saw what Luke went to, right? Like, meaning seeing his friend murdered and his friends clearly do not believe that he could not have done anything. That is. This
there's threat. At least one of them, Dom, really like flat out calls him out.
He calls him out, but you could tell they were all thinking that at some point, or at least majority of them. And that has to be where, in the terms of the movie, like a lot of the trauma and struggle come from, right? It's not only did that, it's he's now this outcast without his friends essentially believing who he is, because the glue of their group is clearly, I do think his name is Robert, and they ain't nothing.
Yeah.
So anyway, he then he burns down their village.
We did find there's a weird reveal here that I feel like is one of those things. It felt very like The Shining to me, where they show you a weird ass thing and you're just like, what the fuck? Remember, he goes upstairs and because another thing she tells him about the creature is that it gives them a natural long life. She's like, we worship it. It gives us a natural long life. He goes upstairs. He goes upstairs to where he's being held, and there's like a room filled with mummies, all sitting.
Mummified. They're alive.
He hears people talking. He hears like chanting in there, and then he goes in, and it's this room full of mummies, and then they're all like alive, like just breathing and coughing, and I love how casually he just sets them on fire. He's got a torch, and he's just like, "Fuck this."
This movie has a good balance. Like, I don't think there's a scene wasted. Just speaking on, with the burning and everything.
Yeah.
Because that's one of those things where in a slow burn there is always that moment where we see, like in these horror movies, this like decrepit creature or the mummified people. I don't know, what the fuck are these mummified people? I don't even put two and two together that these were the people that have been living the long life. I thought she was just like, this is part of my like hypnosis crazy that
it's like they die, but they're not. They're undead. They're somehow like almost in like a stasis, and they're decaying and shit. I thought that was interesting. I also love he punches that old lady. There's like an old witchy lady, and she's kind of in his face, and he just nails her. Of course you would.
Because I just watched a recent movie where a similar thing happens, but in a very cinematic bad way. When he breaks his hand and it actually hurts, and then he can't use his hand, it's causing trauma. I just watched a movie where a Nicolas Cage movie, all things, where he had to get out of handcuffs, and he just casually breaks his hand in the back of a police car, and then we still have 40 minutes left of the movie.
He just uses his hand, no problem.
and at least like Luke is like, he's in pain even with holding the gun. It's just resting on his hand. Like, it was a nice detail after. Because I was just on a podcast speaking about it. Was movie Stolen. It was just on a Nick Cage podcast talking about it. That's one thing I noted. It was like, what? Come on, at least do a little bit of work.
Yeah, come on, man. Buy into it.
So does that, fully kind of escapes, and the creature's toying with him and staying away because it wants him. It's whatever that thing, what they did to his chest, the creature respects and wants that.
That's the interesting thing, is that the creature has clearly chosen him and does not want to kill him, wants to make him part. Even after he kind of attacks the house and kills, it seems like it still kind of wants to make him part of the fold. Like,
could have done it anytime.
Yeah.
That creature, so I kept thinking, this creature, I thought that creature knew exactly where everyone was in that forest. At the time. So the creature, back to the design of it,
incredible. I cannot stress enough how incredible the creature design is.
Because you see more.
This is like an all-time great creature design for me. Like right up there with Giger's Alien and the Relic and like whatever cool monsters you can. The Thing,
It's just unique. It's and the creature design you talk about the hand, like the human hand. It kind of has human arms and hands, and
it's almost like a giant deer with a big skull head, but there's almost like a human torso on the front, kind of.
Torso, but like a
hood covering the face, and these little beady. It's so creepy.
Like a giant deer body.
Yeah.
But the thing with it is, though, in all the angles and shadows, it always looks like a human being. Like, not even just the arms. There's a part of the shadow.
Yeah,
on its back.
Like you said, Jawa. It's almost got like a hood with little beady eyes.
It reminded me of like a human silhouette, a part of it, right? If you're just looking at, anyway, it's clever. And so I did read the Wikipedia of the book. So this was a book,
okay,
and they do I believe the description of the book was very similar to what they did come up with for this design. So they had a template. The difference in the book, and I didn't read the whole thing. It was a lot of paragraphs, guys.
Yeah, come on, too long. TLDR.
But I wanted to get the vibe, and in the book, they're just friends, going camping because their one friend is poor, and this is like the cheapest thing
that's what he can afford. Which, by the way, that's a lie. Camping is not cheap.
Guys,
camping is expensive. If you don't have any gear, camping is very expensive.
I'm going camping this weekend, coincidentally, and I met a buddy out at Walmart last night, and to be like, what do we need? Because people were going with have a lot of stuff. I don't. But I was like, okay, I still spent a good $70-something because I got a small blow up mattress to put under the sleeping bag I have. I had to have fun and buy a hatchet. I bought things, but it was like, this is gonna as flashlights. This is gonna add up.
Or even if like your flashlight needs batteries, you know what I mean? Like there's expenses that you don't think about.
We bought a side tangent. I bought for the thing, because the sleeping bag things were like $8, $10, and there was a pump. And I was like, oh, let's get the electric pump, the portable one. And it goes, we need to take C batteries. And I was like, all right, we go to checkout. C batteries for a 3-pack are $18 a pack, and I need 6 of them. I go, well, I'm gonna run back and get the hand pump because there's no way I'm spending more on batteries than the actual piece.
Right, and also like you're already taking an upgrade to go to the pump, plus then to the battery.
So guys, not a cheap thing, but that's kind of what I gathered the difference of the book to the movie, right? I still think they stumble upon. I think in the book was a church and not a cabin. But
is the stuff about the friend getting killed all in there? Or is that out? Or just
that's what I was skimming for, and I didn't find it. It may be revealed later on in the book, but it didn't sound like it was.
It's interesting because that's such a big part of the movie. So maybe what you got is like someone who took the book and had an adaptation, but wanted to like add an element. Like maybe they'd had some little idea percolating or something.
What this movie has a lot to say is whoever wrote it had a lot of personal things to say. It really seems like someone needed to
processing grief,
and even this ending, right? It's not so. To wrap things up, he does get away from the monster, and you can tell like once you're out of the woods, like they're just looking at each other. He growls back.
Is it that the creature can't come out into the light, or that it just can't leave its woods? You think?
I didn't think it could just leave its woods. That was
I feel like you see it like when he first sees it, it's in the daytime, right?
Yeah,
he sees it kind of up in the woods, and
I think it was that. I think it was just as symbolic.
It just has boundaries to its realm, basically.
Yes, something like how in like the Babadook, like she screams back at the monster and it's hiding in there. Like this is similar to the forest, like and comparatively, like to the Descent. I mean, it doesn't do the fake out that the Descent does, where it's like. By the way, spoilers for everything. Where you see her get out and then actually no, never mind, she's actually in the cave.
Yeah.
This movie doesn't do that. He leaves and it ends. It's a really tight movie. And this is why I was really surprised. I was looking through the Rotten Tomatoes, like just little blurbs, and one of the negative reviews was like, blah, 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 I'm this. And it said, I'm sorry, I didn't pull it, but it was like, it's bloated. It's a really overlong, bloated movie. The movie's an hour and a half.
And it moves. Like, I feel like they're using their time really well. Like,
it's a slow burn by look only.
Right. It's got that vibe of a prestige movie, but it's like pretty, like I said, like by the time they're probably only a half hour, 40 minutes into the movie when they're hitting that cabin. You know what I mean? Like they get things going.
I have notes. Oh, my other notes being a time stuff is, and we actually only get an exposition dump of what's going on with 10 minutes left of the movie, which I actually loved.
Yeah. And I don't think they exposition dump too hard. Like I said, the girl comes in and kind of tries to tell him, but I feel like it's justified because she's actually kind of trying to sell him on the idea of the creature. She like, come on, man, join our cult, bro.
You're gonna have a good time. No,
once in a while, you gotta see this guy, this thing, put a dude in a tree, but he won't put you in a tree.
There is a I don't know the name of it. You can look it up. I didn't watch it, but there is a full 20-minute breakdown some guy did of the ending of this movie explained. It's probably super interesting.
I know there's no way he did a better job than us.
No, this movie's about grief. That's what this movie's about.
Right. And guilt and guilt.
Guilt. Brian, I mean, so as I've said before, and whoever listened to the show, this isn't a fully review show. It's just to have a conversation.
Just had a little discussion.
I will say this is, as all of these movies have been, because we're talking about, mostly people's favorites, this is a high recommendation. If you're into horror films and this sounds like something you want to watch, please,
it's easy to find. Everybody's got Netflix. One of your friends give you your password. If you don't, come on, you know how it goes.
Mm-hmm. And if you know the websites for the bootleg Netflix DVD Blu-ray releases, let me know, because I can find it on Google and I want to buy this movie.
I was telling me I really wish Netflix would just I know they put out a cut, you can buy Stranger Things on DVD.
You can buy their popular things, right? Like they put The Irishman out on Criterion.
But fucking yeah, give me a Criterion of The Ritual. This shit rules.
I wanted my Netflix horror movie that I really liked was Cam, the webcam.
Yeah, I remember Cam. That was good.
And I'm to this day, I'm like, I want that on Blu-ray. Anyway, Brian, what do you got to add? You and me could talk physical media for hours on end.
Yeah, we can sell you one.
Do you have anything else, or final thoughts on The Ritual?
No. Like I said, I think we've recommended it strongly enough. I enjoy this I enjoy horror, but I enjoy this kind of mini genre that has kind of bloomed. You can find me on Twitter at Hurst Ali and tell me if you know other movies that you feel fit into this category.
One we have not mentioned, I think you did, was one of my notes. This is actually clearly taking place in the woods of near Midsummer. Midsummer's still happening, but this is in the
this is the off season. Midsummer's all sunny. This is what happens in the off. These are the people they run into. This is Midsummer's poor neighbors. The town in Midsummer's all classy with their white, and these people are all dirty and grungy. They're we don't fuck with them.
They get government goat milk.
Yeah, that's right. They have a much more beautiful creature in Midsummer. They haven't revealed. We don't see it in the movie, but there's a much more. It's like a unicorn, and then they got this fucking horrible thing.
So, all right. But yes, and as you mentioned, the people can find you at Hercules or every other Tuesday or whenever the FlyOver episodes drop on FlyOver State of Fear. You can check out old episodes of the DVD Bunker.
Oh man, if you dig those up, it's still on YouTube. Some of the audio still lives on our audio channel for FlyOver too. If you dig through the podcast channel for FlyOver, you can find some old bunkers on there too.
So anyway,
hey, FlyOver State of Fear. I can't. So it might give me the bug. I might get back.
I got my bug right now. I'm like, who we get on? All right. You can find me at Chendanga1 on Twitter, and like I said, all those other places. And stay fearful, all. Welcome to FlyOver State of Fear.